Yes,
Okay,
we
so
are live.
I will do a brief introduction, and so then I will pass to the invite guest. So basically, the idea of this workshop is to bring IEEE blockchain group that I belong with the local Portuguese industry that are represented by these two guys here, and also international that is came here. And so, and also a professional master that we are running at Xcate. So we are running this for 4 years. We are going for the 4th edition. And this is an example of collaboration between academy and industry. So, and on the blockchain, we have several very interesting works that have been done through the master and shows this collaboration. So I will highlight here some of these cases to give some context about the past, and then we raise some questions regarding the intervention, and what we'll try is to generate a discussion about this. So basically, on this master, we have a lot of theses in blockchain. Why? Because after they get some knowledge about what is blockchain, and one example will be Gonçalo here representing some interesting case, lots of ideas come for applied work. And what I will show here is some example of this work through these 3 years. And then we go for some of these discussions. So what has been a very important topic is, and by default, and also I bring here the experience of teaching blockchain from 2016, more or less, so more or less 10 years. So at the beginning was very hard to start different guys. I want to say also thanks to Luís Marado that has been with us from the beginning, more or less. So he brings some experience from the industry, and all of this collaboration brings a lot of different cases and opportunities. That's what was the basis for this workshop, and also to involve the IEEE community. And so that's mainly this idea. So only to give some ideas of the works that have been done. So most of the work, what companies think about blockchain is about trust, traceability, auditable, and this kind of things that appears on most of these blockchain works. And on the first year, we have a kind of works on the supply chain for traceability, but also so we have a guy that belongs to a court, and he apply blockchain for the traceability of the proof and that's one of the first work that was done with a real case. And through the years, also we have another work that was about, you know, when you do some donations for international organizations, you don't know where the money goes. So you give and you don't have traceability. So one of the works we did was about the traceability of donation. And again, another work about the reuse of parts. For instance, a guy that was working with to share some of this part. And this year we have some works. One will be representing here that is very interesting, is how the politicians can take out from the blockchain. So what they think of this, what they can use this technology. And Gonçalo was one of the persons that made a lot of interaction about this thesis. He knows about the laws and so on. And this interaction creates a very interesting work basic on these needs. And we have also another work on traceability of wood and several cases. So what we will show here are more or less the examples from this interesting case. So this is an example also. These students enroll on the master and they do applied work. So some of these work are very interesting because companies, entities are using the output of this academic work to do real implementations. So that's another point that is very important. And also, I belong also to IEEE industry group, and this always a problem, the connection between academia and industry. So that's another very interesting example. So this is the points that I want to raise here for discussion and to have some interaction. So I will start with Gonçalo to show a little bit here what are their needs, and bring some interaction, and then perhaps pass to Luis to give some industrial market overview. And we will join also a colleague of mine that have a company, Carlos Coutinho, Caixa Mágica, is a little bit delayed, but we'll talk also about some implementation on digital identity. And last, Kim, you will give also an overview about this because you face this. So, Gonçalo, the floor is yours, and perhaps you can give an overview.
Thank you very much.
We'll interact.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for the invitation. Well, I should have been here with my colleague, Rui Pereira. In fact, he is the master's student, but he unfortunately couldn't be. So I will try to do as best as possible. And of course, I'm not a specialist in blockchain, so I will need your help for the three of you to get along to the next steps. Yes. For the solutions also. Well, small and brief presentation. I'm an economist from as a degree. I've tried to do my PhD in this specific subject. Then I was upset with academia, and I left in the middle of the PhD, so didn't finish. And in fact, the subject it was this one. So I work as a consultant in public affairs, and the question is, what can the relation be between such innovative technology as blockchain and such a gray area as public affairs? Gray, not as in lack of transparency, but as in gray, not so sexy, boring, and so on. So in fact, public affairs is about transparency, ethics, traceability, and trust. So in these four words, you can start to find some relations with blockchain because the traceability, the trust, and the transparency are also some keywords of the blockchain. So I think we will find immediately some relations. As a public affairs consultant, what I try to do, and I always use this expression that I developed, this was the base of the thesis that I have never made in my PhD. How can you be an environment maker instead of an environment taker in the same relation as price maker, price taker? So environment is in fact something that is around companies and are around us. And I can be part of the environment as an environment taker. I don't do as much, I don't contribute as much, or I can be an environment maker. And I can make my own environment. I can be a co-creator of my own environment. And how can I co-create all of this? In relation with all the stakeholders that are around us. If we pass this to companies, this starts to get more obvious. And in fact, the political decision makers are a quite relevant stakeholder for companies. And if I want to be an environment maker, I need to take part on the creation of this environment. How do I do this? I start to interact with them. And then transparency starts to come, and ethics and traceability. Because I will meet, I will interact, I will present some papers, some documents. I will give meetings with the political decision makers. In Portugal, as the more obvious, the legislative power and the executive power, so the Portuguese parliament and the government. As a consultant, I meet with the government and with the Portuguese parliament every week, taking with me different clients, different companies of different sectors. As we all know, especially the Portuguese, we did have some problems in the past with the relation between private sector and public sector. In fact, two governments fall because of allegedly lack of transparency. So two of our governments fall because we had no regulation and no way of following the meetings and the past acts between companies and public sector. So this is where blockchain can come and help. In fact, this is a true and real-time case, because right now, in this specific moment, so next month, the regulation for public affairs will go back to the Portuguese Parliament to be discussed and defined in small details. They will do the fine-tuning of the regulation, and they will approve it soon. It will be somewhere between December and January. After a few years of discussions, the parliamentary groups, they have presented their own proposals. There's a majority of parliamentary groups willing to do this regulation. And the thing is, we will do it in theory, that we want transparency, we want traceability, we want everything to be as smooth and transparent as possible. We will approve it in the parliament, but the next question will be, now what? What kind of software we will use? Are we going to do a website? And then what? Who can access the website? Who can consult the website? Where will this information be? Who is the gatekeeper? And so on and so on and so on. And so my colleague, Rui Pereira, came to me with this idea. Gonçalo, do you think blockchain can help the Portuguese regulation in the future and to create the full ecosystem where all of these meetings will be registered, where all of the interactions will be presented, and where all the documents will be available for consults without the chance of being changed in the future, with full confidence that everything that is there is completely trustful, not biased. No one really had the chance to interact with all this information. And so we started to create a blockchain proposal for the future regulation in Portugal. So the parliament will approve December, January, and they will make this question afterwards. Now what? They will open for sure a tender for someone to come to help with the software, with all the technical details. And what we are trying to show in a theoretical way, so my colleagues' thesis and all of this approach, this is not yet, we also have some practical examples, some mock-ups and so on, but we are not still presenting to the Portuguese Parliament a true solution, where we are showing them, if you have, I don't know the exact keywords from the blockchain, but if we have registered users, if you have specific nodes to enter and consult the blockchain, if you have the right places to have the information stored, if you have double interactions between the one that presents the information and the one that validates it, we can have free and public information available for everyone, or different levels of information available for different stakeholders. So a journalist can exceed most of the information, maybe some confident plan from a company that is still not for commercial purpose, still not available for everyone, can be available to different levels of people interacting in the blockchain. So this is mainly the idea. We do think that this can be quite helpful, and I think blockchain as a I would say, just from the user perspective, blockchain can start to grow for the public in general outside the crypto, outside the financial markets. We do need to bring blockchain to other levels of the other places of the society, other sectors. And I think that for this kind of information between private sector and public sector, with all the confidence that is already proven, I think it can be quite helpful.
Okay, Gonçalo, thank you. So this is an example of this interaction that is not always easy. So there was an opportunity that was the middleman here was Rui, that is not here, that is the master student. So he gets some knowledge about what is blockchain, that is not only a crypto or a database or someone, and check needs on the real case and makes this interface. So this is very interesting because real problems can benefit from this approach. So I think here the problem is mainly the traceability and the trust and the control environment to check all this information that sometimes is very sensitive, I think. So, and to build this, so is a solution that still a lot to improve, but we are giving the first steps. And I think this is a very interesting, that's the reason I asked Gonçalo, and thanks to come here, to talk about these needs and this interaction. And perhaps to generate a little more interaction, I will pass to Luis. So Luis is a guy that is, how many years experience in the area?
Technically working for 8 years already.
So and I think you can give a status about most of the projects you have done and so on. And what is the market, so on, and perhaps if you can comment also at the end.
I'm sure I will. All right. So let me see if this is working well. It seems so. So I guess my experience, as I was stating, I've been in this industry working exactly there for 8 years, but I've been kind of knowledgeable of blockchain pretty much since its inception. But having the opportunity to join a company that was working in this sphere, I started, then I jumped immediately on it. And it was a company that was doing consulting and services particularly for fintech companies, for banks, financial industry as a whole. And here we can think about some of the major banks and institutions that exist around the world, really. And was fortunate to be, of course, part of many of those projects. So one key lesson that I always learned, and kind of bringing together the message here from Gonçalo, is that when I look at blockchain, I don't necessarily always look at it just because people look at these objectives. It's basically like transparency and trust, and it's like all or nothing. And in reality, when we're discussing blockchain, it's never all or nothing. Particularly when you're talking here for financial industry, it's definitely not transparency as a whole, transparency that they need, or that is the business need and regulatory need, because not even regulatorily, these industries, banks and so forth, they cannot do that. That's illegal, period, pretty much. Or either the regulation needs to change quite significantly, because there's a lot of issues with it. So even on the discussions we were hearing before this, there were talking about strategies to invest with crypto and so forth. Many of these strategies, you have like lags, which create opportunities for people to kind of take on, basically step ahead and gain from that information that is still not committed by the network itself. So some of these things, particularly when we're talking about markets, it's not appropriate sometimes to think of blockchains that they are going to solve in a regulated format, okay? Or at least not as they are right now. There are challenges, at least for that. And but there are also technologies which are, of course, based on the topic of blockchain. They are targeting much of that, and that's what I had the I was fortunate enough, of course, to be involved on some of these projects. Nevertheless, so of course, then the opportunity came in at some moment to start participating with the academy, teaching students from master's degrees on these topics. And it was always curious because I always brought this other condition that pretty much all students wasn't blockchain for transparency. I'm not always. And it was funny always listening to their feedback and trying to come back at me somehow to figure out how they could put two and two together, I guess, after all of this. So on that topic, of course, we've done a lot of work, particularly for that course on blockchain. So the students were always requested to do works which were kind of looking at industry problems, whether it was traceability, whether it was insurance, financials, whatever. We basically gave them leeway to explore a lot of times all these different challenges. And they presented different solutions in many different capacities. Of course, since it was a course, many of them were not very let's say in a production mode, to say the least. Of course, they were very, so the focus was, of course, short. But it was always interesting to see how they thought about these things, some more evolved and some others less, of course, as normal. But it drives me to currently where I'm working, which is a company that is trying to do work for the real estate industry. And I would dare to say that it's a problem pretty much worldwide, where there's a lot of lack of transparency in many different forms, okay? And of course, where this kind of technology can bring a lot of value to all the stakeholders involved on the industry. Again, there's definitely a pitch, I guess, that can be made even to governments, because as Gonçalo was saying, governments, yes, they have the ethos to be transparent, to provide information for the citizens, which are themselves funding the government somehow. But that doesn't really happen a lot of times, unfortunately. And maybe these technologies can help support many of those, so that capacity that governments should really have, I would say. And that's what we're kind of working on, to bring not only that capacity in terms of giving, again, information that should be publicly available, okay? Even looking at real estate, one of the key issues I would say would be the transaction values of how for what values are homes being traded in the market, because that, of course, is I would say probably a leading cause of speculation in the market. That's just releasing this information that should be public, and even the governments. That's actually an interesting point that we've heard from the Ministry from Housing. I guess that's the translation I would say into English here would be Secretaria. But anyway, beside the point, we've heard that they lack the capacity to gain the information. When a decision maker wants to gather the information, he asks kind of 3 different entities to gather the data and then waits whatever time. That usually takes months to get the data. And when they get the data is already outdated. So it's a mess also for decision makers to actually be able to do the decisions with actual real data that is not invalid. So if this is the decision makers that should have the information, what about the citizen that when he goes to do a simple transaction on buying a house, what does he rely the information on? He relies on asking prices that anyone can ask whatever. And then that's the mess, I guess, that we're living as a whole. It's kind of nice also to make the bridge again to the academy, because we're trying to do some work, which in this case we're doing with some students at Nova, actually. which is to bring some of this to life. Okay, so it's a work that we're doing right now. So it's, of course, we'll see the fruits of it probably by mid this year. But along with that, we're also focused very much on the reputation of many different agents that take part, of course, on these transactions. And that's kind of like checking on the identity, whether they are who they say they are, checking if they've been doing their work in a correct fashion. So kind of doing as well, kind of an auto-regulation, of course, of how these different professionals should do their work. Here, of course, we are focused right now real on the intermediaries, so agents, realtors as a whole, because that's another area where there's not a lot of transparency on how things are done there. And even worse, if you look at the regulation from European from the European community, of course, on GDPR and many others, they are not even complying, or we could easily find ways in which that is not being complied by these institutions. Everyone, in particular, I guess here focusing on the Portuguese market, if they went through any of these agents, they probably shared information which is private and sensitive many times through email. So that who knows then where that information from email goes through and so on. So of course that's a challenge, and of course we are trying to bridge these two, trying to take, of course, an opportunity together with Academy to solve many of these challenges, and that's kind of where we are going right now. So I think that's
thank you, Luis.
That's a good
so we have more guests that arrive, so now I need to manage the time. So I will pass the for Kim. So Kim, if you can do a small introduction about you for people know what you are, and please try to use around 5 minutes, because I think when you start is okay. No problem. So if it's on. Let's try this.
Thank you. My name is Kim Peder Jørgensen, and I have the pleasure of being part of the Portuguese Blockchain Agenda project. That's my role here. In these 5 minutes, I would talk a little about some of the various aspects that were raised. One of them, which we didn't mention precisely, is how to get industry interested in investing in blockchain projects. I've actually worked with this back in my home country, Denmark, and we made a very early analysis in 2015-16, which was a little premature, but the results were fairly clear. There were surprisingly many corporations, large and small, that were looking into blockchain. Not many implemented much. It was premature, but we did the analysis. And the interesting thing is that a lot of industry looks into things with a fast payback, of course. But on the other hand, there are also several industry groups that have a much longer perspective. And that's where it's interesting. They want to invest in basic research, not want to, but they see the need for. That's typically industry which have a long financial payback, like the medical industry, like the ocean transportation industry, like the oil industry. The point is, when people outside industry talk about industry, they think there should be a payback within 4 weeks or something like that. That's not necessarily true. Good. Enough of industry. I've actually also had the pleasure of working with politicians. And one of the things, particularly when blockchain was new, and I have not been speaking with any Portuguese politicians, I should say that, but I've been speaking with politicians in other countries, is that they tend to lose interest in blockchain fairly fast when they learn that you cannot erase what has been said. That's interesting, isn't it? And I mention something from the press. There was this scandal some years ago in United Kingdom, and it's it has been public, else I wouldn't mention it, where there were many immigrants in the United Kingdom that came from the Caribbean in the 60s because there were booming markets, and they needed teachers and postmen and lots of people. And the point is that when these people grew older here in 2010-15, and they would like to retire and have their pension, then the then Minister of Interior Affairs, Theresa May, later Prime Minister, she had instructed that they should get rid of the files, so they wouldn't sort of be a cost to the British society. You could say something about the nicety, but it's well proven, and some people have received compensation. But that's just a matter of saying that it is very vital, and blockchain is a good help there. It is very vital that we as a society are capable of protecting citizens' interests also against the politicians. If somebody wants to change something, at least it's very, very, very difficult to do it. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's very difficult to do it. This increases public trust. You can look it up yourself, the scandal I was talking about. But the point is accountability. That was where you both have been leading into. That is one of the things that is very, very good. I like that very much. The point is also that it will require a change of our societies. Many people in business, in public services, and all over like that they are not accountable. I mean, their whole society is built upon being unaccountable. So that requires some change. It's just to say it's not enough that you offer some technical opportunities. There needs to be some groundwork done. And there are a number of paradigms that you could say that blockchain and distributed technologies, not least distributed ledger technologies, but distributed technologies in general, that they imply that we would need some time to be clear of those paradigms and educate decision makers in business and public life and all over in those things. One of the problems I see in education, if we should speak about blockchain education, is that there's a lot of education in technology, and that's good, of course. I fear, and I have practical experience of that without a purpose, I mean, why? What can it be used for? Why do we do this? Then it's very often, I would say, an empty exercise. Sorry if I'm rude, but that's what I mean. A very high percentage of the software engineering education blockchain is. It is not put into context. I mean, why are we developing these fantastic digital services we are developing? And then how can blockchain be used to fulfill those? And that's, of course, a very valid and good thing. But very often the why is missing. How are we doing time-wise? I do have a few. Okay, but I would say that I'll finish quickly. The point by doing this is that I think it's really important that we give our students the feeling that they can contribute in creating a new society, and not a dream world society, a real society where, first of all, through blockchain, and we can talk about that outside this, you can get access to services you cannot get access to normally. So you can expand the usage field for each user through wallets. And at the same time, you get a personal protection that is much higher, so security increases. That's really important. I mean, you can participate in democracy with a higher protection of the individual. That's extremely important, also in a national context. And good thing is that these decentralized solutions, let's look a little at the challenges of decentralized solutions. First of all, I mentioned paradigms. They often require a very different setup than we have today, because we are all trained in being very centralistic in our thinking. And decentral solutions are not something that comes easy, but it's worth it. And it's simply dead easy. I used, as you can see, I stopped being black hair some years ago. Decentralized solutions can offer a fantastic, both service increase, but not least a decrease in transaction costs, often a factor 100. That's quite common. I mean, I've done that several times, gone into business models and then reduced the transaction cost by 100. The problem is, of course, that the current companies, not least the banks, but it's not just the banks, it's all over, they get their profitability by being inefficient. So now we are hitting straight into, I would say, change that often will create other other competitors coming from the outside, because the incumbents, they will try to protect their home turf. I think that was all I would like to say. Thanks very much.
I will pass now the floor to Carlos. Carlos is a colleague of mine, but also is a businessman. So he have a company, so he can represent both sides. Yeah. And I asked him also to come here because on this topic of traceability, control the information access, digital identity plays a very important role. And Carlos, I think the Carlos company, Caixa Mágica, is one of the companies that is implementing that in Portugal. So he can share here some of this. So I'll pass to Carlos, and thank you again.
You're welcome. So hi everybody. My name is Carlos Coutinho. I'm R&D director of an SME in Portugal called Caixa Mágica Software, and I'm also professor at the University ISCTE as João. So I'm responsible for the cloud computing area, and whereas I also try to research a little bit deeper over blockchain technologies and systems. I also liked in my company to try to implement and help consulting and helping implementation of these. Therefore, we actually did a spin-off company from our business in a small company called WallID, which had the purpose of creating a digital identity in the blockchain. So the company was founded by us and by the Portuguese Mint House, which are responsible for the official Portuguese citizens card identity. So we created this small company, which had the purpose of creating a digital identity in the blockchain, which is really interesting. And besides that, we also do a lot of work using blockchain, but targeted to industry. So manufacturing companies, with some large companies like Maersk and other companies, logistic companies. And lately, just to be very brief, we've been drawing over the concepts of security over the blockchain, whereas we know that blockchain is by definition permissionless, and it has various concerns over permission. There are still as time is passing over and people are starting to trust more and more on the blockchain, we are putting our most valuable assets on the blockchain. Not only are we talking about digital identity, as we talked about, or decentralized identity, but also decentralized finance, which means money, which is really dangerous because we, although the blockchain is quite safe and it's quite, it has multiple mechanisms to ensure safeguarding and permissionless, it's still not completely safe. And so there is this small trend, which is what I'm researching currently, which is called the zero trust blockchain systems, which are, the purpose is to bring zero trust, which is a new tendency in terms of cybersecurity, into the blockchain systems as well, which means that every time that we need to do something on the blockchain, we need to identify ourselves, we need to reinforce identity, endpoint systems. We need to clearly state that we have only the permissions that we are required to, just for doing the requests and to doing the roles that we need on the specific business. So more and more, this is the field where we are advancing currently, is to bring zero trust, which is a tendency in terms of cybersecurity all over the IT landscape, and to bring it also to blockchain. Because despite blockchain is quite safe, it is not completely safe. And once you are inside the system, you are able to do side navigation on the system. So that's a danger that we need to avoid. And zero trust aims to avoid that part, where they need to continuously evaluate the security of each, not only of the person that is doing the requests, but also of the endpoint itself. Because currently with Bring Your Own Device and IoT, we keep introducing new devices into this world, either blockchain or IT, where we are not completely sure about the safeness of that environment. So that's what we are currently aiming, and that's what we are working on. Okay? So I'll just keep that because we are really out of time.
Thank you. Thank you, Carlos. So I will pass. So only to highlight also we are here doing a different thing that we are transmit live in YouTube, and we have more participants online than on the room. That is very good. So so they are following and they will ask also some questions. So now I will pass the floor to Raymond. So he's a distinguished professor in IEEE and from the US in the cybersecurity, and we will give also some experience about this topic, the relation with company, universities, and perhaps a little bit of cybersecurity. And again, I will ask if you can use 5 minutes of process. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. So one of the things that really impressed me, okay, sorry, I should introduce myself first. Hi everyone, I'm Raymond Chu. So I'm actually the Associate Dean for Graduate Studies at the University of Texas at San Antonio, the College of AI, Cyber and Computing. So that's a really new college. The college only formed like 3 months ago on 1st of September. So basically what is unique in our universities, we have cybersecurity in many departments. So for example, I'm actually in the Department of Information Systems and Cybersecurity. We used to be in the College of Business. So we do cybersecurity and AI. We also have computer science. We also have computer engineering. We also have statistics. They are all doing cybersecurity and AI to some extent. So we are now all in the same College of AI and Cyber and Computing, so CAICC. So one of the things that really impressed me about this conference is the healthy mix between academics and industry, as well as government representation. Because to me, this is very unique. Because most of our conferences that you go to, for example, if you go to academic conference, you see 90%, if not 100% academics. If you go to industry conference, you see 80% or 90% industry. But this, I would think that is almost a 50-50 or maybe 60-40 around that. So this is really a healthy mix. And I think especially for topics like blockchain, whether it's blockchain for cyber, blockchain as in DeFi and so on, or cyber for blockchain, it's very important to have conversations between both academics, industry, as well as government sectors. So for example, because I work in cybersecurity, and we actually use blockchain for cyber as well. So I'm kind of jealous about the situation over here in Portugal because there seems to be you seem to have a very robust ecosystem for blockchain, whether it's for startup or for government fundings in blockchain. That's not the case for US. I think my colleague from IEEE blockchain BCTC on the first day yesterday, he shared that I think one of the questions that he was asked is, comparing the different regions, which one do you think is more advanced in terms of blockchain research? I think he mentioned that Asia and Europe, which I totally agree. I think US is quite behind. I mean, sad to say, US is quite behind in terms of blockchain. And again, drawing from personal experience, when it comes to funding-wise, most of my fundings are for AI for cyber or cybersecurity. It's very hard in US right now to get funding for blockchain. And of course, some of my projects, even though it's for cyber, we use blockchain to help us achieve some of the cybersecurity objectives that we want to achieve. So in the sense that cyber is part of the equation, but it's not the equation. I mean, in many of the things that I do. But again, back to the point about the public-private partnership, which I think is important. So for example, a few years ago, I mean, my colleagues, in my department, we actually wanted to introduce a new program. So we actually engaged very, very strongly with the industry and government sectors in San Antonio. I'm not sure how many of you here are familiar with San Antonio, but San Antonio is known as Military City USA, but also Cyber USA. So in fact, we are the second largest cybersecurity employer in the whole nation, just after DC. So we have a very robust cybersecurity ecosystem in San Antonio. So we want to do something, we want to leverage our strength in AI and cyber. So what we found out through the conversation with the industry and other stakeholders is there are a lot of AI programs. There are a lot of cyber programs out there, in the nation as well as internationally. But there is no program that trains students on the use of AI for cyber. And because of those conversations that we have, we actually introduced a new Bachelor of Science in Cyber Analytics. So again, I think back to your point, Kim, you mentioned about education. I think it's very important to have this conversation with industry to actually understand what the needs are, what the pain points are when it comes to, in terms of skills shortage. Of course, at the same time, we have to strike a balance. We want to make sure that we are not becoming a vocational training institution. We are still university. We have to understand, where the balance is. But at the same time, we want to train students to be workforce ready. So it's very important for us to have a conversation with the industry, with other stakeholders to actually understand what skill sets are required, at least in the next few years, so that we can train students to be workforce ready. We are going down the vocational training path. So that's why I'm really impressed about, the mix of industry, academic, and government representative that we have here. So I think that's about it from me, 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So to end and to raise also a little bit questions from the audience, I will finish with Gonçalo again, because it's very important to have your needs from, in this case, entities, and the case that Gonçalo brings here, I think, is very important. So, and perhaps Gonçalo, you try to describe a little bit what you feel from this interaction that you had with the university and the real case, and you are in the middle. So we are proposing solutions, but perhaps the implementation will be very hard. So when you will start to have traceability, some people will not like that. So can you comment?
Yes, thank you very much. So I pointed here, politicians, they lose interest in blockchain as soon as they realize they can change what they have said. So I have marked it here. Just 10 seconds brief. I'm a public affairs consultant for the two colleagues that arrived. And in Portugal, we are now writing the regulation for public affairs interactions. So for transparency between the relation between companies or civil society and public decision makers. And we are trying to use blockchain as a way of registering and have traceability of all the interactions and so on. So this was what I was speaking just before the two colleagues arrived. So in fact, since I'm not an expert, and so I've come to, well, I heard about blockchain previously, but as a citizen, mostly in crypto. But in fact, I think one of the needs, I wrote it here, blockchain for dummies. We do need to have a way of presenting blockchain as blockchain for dummies. In Portuguese, we used to say blockchain para totós. Is a Portuguese version. We do need to have this version, because I won't be able to present this, or one of you to present this to a politician, not to the Minister of the Technology Development. That's not the key guy. I need to present this to the member of the parliament that is coming from the north of Portugal. He was a local president of a small place. He's now a member of the parliament, and I need to tell him how important this is and how relevant this option can be. And I need to have an easy way. I won't be the guy, but someone, if we reach that moment, we need to have an easy way to explain how does blockchain works. And while I was being introduced to the technology, a few needs arrive, and I just want to leave you here. Maybe they are not completely true, but for example, everyone needs to be able to consult the blockchain. And when I mean everyone, not a registered user, because I don't want to be a registered. I just want to go there, type something in my computer, and be able to look at, did the Minister of Economy met with someone from the energy industry? I want to see the list of interactions between, it could be someone from because the interaction can be sometimes with a private citizen. He just wants to meet with the minister because his building have a lack of power in my streets, and I'm a lowest citizen, and I want to make a difference in my street. Or it can be the full powerful industry of energy meeting with the ministry. I want to be able to consult it. And as a journalist, a consultant, a private citizen, I don't want to need to have a register to be part of the blockchain. I just want to consult. So you need to find a way of delivering this. I'm not sure if it exists, but as far as I understood, it's not that easy. Also, as a politician, and taking in your words, they do find out that well, in blockchain everything will be there. They won't be able to change it. We need to find a good way of deciding in the future, who needs to present the info, who needs to validate, and am I able, whether I'm the political decision maker or the company, am I able to write whatever I want there? Imagine that I say, I meet with you, you are the minister. I met with you and we discussed, and I can put a lot of things there. How can you interact with this? Are you going to validate? Just don't validate? But I wrote, so it's there already. Who can, who can be the, the referee in this kind of, there's no referee, right? But this was a meeting just between the two of us. So it's my words against your words. I can say, no, we didn't talk about energy. We talk about education. And you say, no, we talk about the energy regulation. No, please don't say that. Oh, too late. It's written there. So how can this relation works since there are only two parts in this kind of interactions? So this is something that we need to address. As I told you in this master thesis with my colleague Rui Pereira that was able to be here, we are doing in a theoretical way, just a first approach to this problem. But this is something that sometimes we are dealing with in our conversations. And I think it's a need that we need to address. So who can access the information and how easy it is? How can I explain this to everyone in a very, very easy way? And who can do the arbitrage between what can be written by one of the two parts and just to make sure that everything is true. So I think these three needs to be addressed in the future.
I don't know if the audience here want to raise some questions. I have here some questions remotely. So I don't know if someone here wants to raise some questions. So, but I have here from the audience, perhaps Gonçalo, to you, the first one. So they are talking blockchain is decentralized and the government is centralized. So so blockchain by default is decentralized and government is centralized. So how you see to join this or how the process can? Yeah, now I think you need this.
Yeah, I do understand the question, and it's true. So the thing is, public affairs is not about a centralized relation. So public affairs is about, as I was telling before, is about being an environment maker instead of just an environment taker. And I can be an environment maker in all kinds of relations. So when I, as a consultant, when I come to academia, for example, I come here, I look for legitimacy, I look for insights, I look for trustful information, and this is already public affairs. So public affairs, it's not government affairs. It's not only relation with the government. So it's a much broader kind of relations. In fact, in talking about the specific point of government affairs, relation with the governments or public decision makers in general, as the Portuguese Parliament, they are a centralized power. It's true. Our president, it's one person, for example. Our government, they are like 20 or 30 people, and the parliament are 230. But the thing is, on our side, the civil society, we are thousands, we are millions. They need also to relate with us. This is a bi-directional relation, and we need everyone to have, as you were mentioning before, we need to have, sorry, I was looking for the words you said. We need to have, I did write your sentence that was very interesting. Sorry. But we need to, it's about the accountability. We need to be accountable for what we are presenting to the decision makers, but they also need to be accountable for what they are presenting to us. So this is a two-ways relation. So
if it's centralized for them and decentralized for us, it's also the opposite. So we need to be, as you were saying, we fund the government. We are part of it. They need to be accountable for us also, and we need to help them to take decisions. So this is just about, lobbying is just about providing them information. Of course, it's biased. Of course, I represent my street if I want to bring something new for my street, not the other street. So I'm biased. I need to know that I'm biased, but I need to know what kind of information I can bring to the table. This is about having the information as transparent as possible, and to know that information is biased, but everyone should know who brought the information, what was the purpose, and so on, so on, so on. So I think that even if the government is centralized, I think they can manage, because they already do, to collect info from everyone.
Okay, Gonçalo, thank you. So I have here one more question, and perhaps I will pass to you, Raymond. It's about AI and blockchain, how they can work together. If you can comment a little bit on this to solve real problems. I don't know.
I think really depends on how you want to use the AI and blockchain, because I think earlier today, was it Eli? Yeah, I think Eli actually has mentioned quite a few interesting use cases of how blockchain and AI can work together. Even for cybersecurity, we are actually deploying both blockchain and AI to work. For example, we actually use AI, especially explainable AI, to help us to detect, IoT devices they are potentially compromised. So once we identify those devices that are potentially compromised, we kind of isolate them. We put them in the blockchain-based system so that we can build some sort of consensus to determine whether those are compromised. If they are compromised, we are going to remove them from the system. Of course, over here, I'm giving a very high-level overview, a very simplistic view of what we are proposing here. But there are many ways you can actually integrate both blockchain and AI in a number of applications, especially for cybersecurity. And that's actually one of the applications that we were actually working on.
I don't know. So I think we are more or less out of time. So a little bit, perhaps we can talk a little bit outside and also with the audience. So perhaps I will always to end this. And first of all, thank you to Blockchain Portugal, my colleagues Nuno and Catarina that helped me to set up this, and also about the INDEG Executive Education that allows us to transmit this, and also the professional master that plays a very important role on this relation between companies and academy. So through these 3 years was very interesting, all the cases that professionals brings. And this case that Gonçalo also talk a little bit is one of these examples. And also that one point that Gonçalo raised here about the formation in blockchain. So project, the blockchain.pt is giving a lot of formation for free. So the problem is, again, we are doing this every month, different universities, and the formation is free. And IEEE also plays a very important role on this, because it is helping us bringing external experts like to complement the Portuguese environment. So, and I think this was a very good work that we are trying to give for the companies perspective about what they can bring from blockchain, because most of the cases, and I've been teaching blockchain more or less 10 years, it's the money, the Bitcoin, and all the others that are important about to the trust, the access of information, to share, integration, are also very important. And what I told most of the times to guys from companies, so usually business is driven by the information system. So most of the time you are not allowed to do this because the information system is not prepared, and blockchain is flexible. So it's the community and the relations and all of this that can be established. So, and you will see a lot of growing about this initiative. So I don't know if someone wants to do a final remark. Otherwise I close, and thanks also for all being here, and also for this new initiative of transmitting this through YouTube. So I don't know if there is more questions online, so I need only to check if there is more. So this is not easy. I need to follow. to check this. So from the IEEE blockchain, nothing. Let me check on this test side, also nothing. So thank you, and we finish this. Thank you. So I don't know.